Let's put the question to Rick Grenell. He advised 4 U.S. ambassadors to the UN, is also a Fox News contributor. Does it matter, the terminology that we use?
It does, and I know some people are questioning, look, whatever we call it, let's get beyond this. And I would agree. First of all, it matters because you have to know what you're fighting. You have to know that this is not a long-term policy to, try to get Muslims to have better entrepreneurship skills. This is what the president is talking about. It's almost like the president is talking about flood insurance when the house is burning down. So I would say we can have the long-term discussion, but right now we need the fire department at the house. We need to confront the ISIS killers, and that's what we're not hearing. And one of the things that the reason why this matters is because the president's policy that he put forward in the authorization to Congress doesn't allow intelligence officers on the ground. We're not able, John, to find out what the best target is so that our bombing campaign is just sporadic. It's kind of going nowhere. This is why it matters.
The president had to be dragged kicking and screaming to that bombing campaign, it seemed. He has talked about the fact that we are taking on ISIL in that way, but as you say, we're not dropping a whole lot of bombs. I mean, we're not launching the kinds of missions that we used to launch during the Gulf War, for instance.
Look, I think a lot of the generals will tell you that we don't have the right information. And when you don't have precision information, you can't have precision bombing campaigns. You're doing a general bombing campaign that's more expensive. It's also wreaking more havoc. I'm not sure why we would want to have a drone campaign or a general bombing campaign to fight ISIS when what we really need is we need boots on the ground. We need to forget about this campaign promise that the president made. Get boots on the ground so that the intelligence we have is timely and accurate.
I thought of the irony of that footage, the picture of the Coptic Christians who were executed on the shores there by ISIS. Those were all Christians who had left Egypt to go to Libya because Libya has oil and therefore has a lot of jobs. That's what those guys were doing over there, working. Now the president says, if we only would provide jobs, we wouldn't have a problem with ISIS.
Look, again, I think that the president is looking at the long-term strategy and missing the short-term crisis. And that's the biggest problem. Some of the things that he was talking about doing is what you do after you get the house no longer on fire. That's when you rebuild. And I think you're exactly right. I mean, the Egyptians, for instance, are really annoyed at the Americans right now. They see the Americans are not putting forward any ideas, so they're going around us.
And that's why we were not notified, for instance, of the targets that the Egyptian Air Force struck in Libya?
Yeah, the Egyptians are saying, what's the purpose of telling the Americans? They're either going to try to stop us or they're not going to participate, so there's no need. When there's a vacuum of leadership, then others start acting, and then we have chaos around the world because there's no strategy. Look, I've been inside the Security Council. I know that when you have an issue, every head turns to the guy or the girl who has the United States placard in front of them. It's just the fact. They look at the Americans for the strategy. You don't have to have boots on the ground, American troops every single time in every conflict. But the Americans have to call the meeting. They have to decide who's doing what, and they have to have the strategy.
Rick Grenell. Rick, thank you.
Thanks, John.